Good afternoon, good evening, or even good morning, wherever you may be dialing in from, and a very warm welcome to this panel discussion as a side event to the Vienna Energy Forum. My name is Nikolaus Schall, and I will be moderating this panel discussion. The theme is Humanizing Energy and Regional Energy Transitions. In the next hour, we will be discussing the opportunities and challenges of humanizing energy in regional energy transition. So why is this topic so relevant? Well, regions are at the forefront of energy transition. They have to implement the transition goals and climate ambitions in the localities at the subnational level. Both the opportunities and the challenges of the energy transition are directly felt within the local industries and communities. All the more for those regions where industries, jobs and communities have been involved in production of carbon-intensive energy sources, such as coal production. On the other hand, you see many regions wanting to use the opportunities of the energy transition for local development by becoming wind regions or solar regions or even hydrogen regions. Transitions can therefore only successfully be by considering the local context. There is no one-size-that-fits-all approach. Local circumstances, including workforce skills and capabilities, but also the broader societal context, will determine the speed and the outcome of the transition process. This is why it is important to focus on humanizing energy in regional energy transitions. In this panel discussion, we want to explore what are the challenges and opportunities, and we want to use practical examples to illustrate how regions are achieving the energy transition process. Important will be the focus on end users, people, workers, communities who can be put at the center of the energy transition process to ensure that transitions are fair and practical. I am delighted that we are joined by an excellent panel of experts to share their experience and thoughts with us. Karina Medev-Bregdar is a senior energy policy advisor and vice chair of the World Energy Council in Slovenia. Karina is experienced energy policy professional currently working for a Slovenian utility, HSE Holding. HSE is a large energy employer in Slovenia that also owns the thermal power plant and coal mine. Nienke Hoorman is regional minister for the Groningen region in the Netherlands and is responsible for energy policy there. Groningen is a region currently that has a big gas producing area that now aims to transition from gas production into becoming a leading region for hydrogen production and transport. Russell Bishop is the principal economist of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and he leads on the EBRD Just Transition Initiative and will give us insights into financing mechanisms and the Just Transition Initiative of the EBRD. And finally, let me introduce Philippe Joubert, Senior Energy and Sustainability Advisor. Philippe has held numerous senior international roles in the area of energy, working with both governments and industry, and is also a senior advisor to the World Energy Council. I'd like to welcome all of you panelists to the discussion, which we will now start focusing on. But to get us going, maybe we can just have a little bit of a warm-up. And if you think about the theme of this panel discussion, namely humanizing energy in regional energy transitions, what are the first words, or what first comes to your mind? Perhaps Nienke can start the process if you would like to give us some ideas.
Yes, sure. Yes, well, the most important one is that, an energy transition is a transition, and you never know where it ends or where it starts, because we're in the middle of a transition. And some people get a little bit afraid from it because they lose the stability, perhaps. So if you can give them a perspective, something they can work on, that's the most helpful. That's what I was thinking of.
So giving a perspective is a key word there, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, super. Karina, how do you see it from your side?
Yes, good afternoon. Well, coming from the electricity sector, the first word that comes to my mind is for sure the concept of just transition, right? in the context of reaching ambitious energy and climate targets, the gradual phasing out of coal, as you mentioned earlier, closing the thermal power plants has a major social aspect, especially with regards to the job losses. So when discussing energy transition, at least for me and for my company and for our country, the key concept here is the just transition.
Russell, looking at it from a banking arm, what do you say to this all?
Well, I think I would focus on two words: the humanizing, which I think is about people, and the regional, which is about place. So I think this is about people and places. On the humanizing aspect, I think what's very important to underline is that we're all involved in this from different angles, whether as decision makers, whether as consumers, as individuals. And I think this gives us a perspective that we can focus on today. And we play multiple roles, I think, as individuals.
Super, Russell. Russell, if you could just bring your microphone a little bit closer next time. You're a little bit faint, but that's okay, sorry. Philippe, how do you see it from as a representative of the World Energy Council and your long-term experience in the area?
I will say three things. First, I will say probably that this just a position of world bring to my mind trust, because I think region is probably the right level of building trust in this complexity that is coming. I will come back to what Nienke said about collaboration, because in transition, it will be messy anyway, socially, and we will have winner and loser, and we have to take care of the losers if we don't want to have too much resistance, and region is the right level for this. And I will also say complementarity and diversity, because no silver bullet exists. So region, again, can provide to us diverse situation, diverse solution that can build together the right answer to your challenge.
We'll take up those points as we go through the process and take them up towards the end. So I'll challenge you again on your keywords towards the end of the session.
Okay. I will leave before you challenge me anyway. So.
Okay, I think the idea, literally, we've got two really excellent examples that we would like to share with you to get the panel discussion going. And we're looking at these examples from two different regions, two different societal contexts, and two different transition pathways. And maybe, Karina, we can start with you in Slovenia. Perhaps you could explain to the audience the challenges you faced in Slovenia to implement a coal exit strategy, especially from the perspective of HSE, which I understand to be the largest energy utility and energy employer in Slovenia. How did you go about this process? What challenges did you meet? And how did you go about addressing these challenges in this coal exit strategy? Maybe some words from your side.
Yeah, thank you, Nicholas, for me to being able to start. Well, actually, Slovenia is just in the process of adopting national coal phase out and restructuring of coal regions strategy. So we are not yet in the process of implementing it. So let me maybe just overview a little bit on the process side. It's kind of a twofold process. So right after European Commission established the Coal Regions in Transition platform, we as HSE, as the largest Slovenian utility, recognized this opportunity for us to join and Slovenia to be a part of it. So we identified two coal regions in Slovenia. So one is the Šaleška region, the second one is the Zasavje. We as HSE are actually an owner of single and the largest thermal power plant in Slovenia, 600 megawatts, and an active coal mine. So this will be the main focal point of this coal regions for restructuring. So after joining this platform, the Commission also provided us with the technical assistance to prepare this national strategy. And now, in parallel, respective regional action plans are under preparation. And these action plans will actually serve as the basis for the projects in the region, which will be also co-financed via some EU dedicated funds, like the Just Transition Fund and some other financial means, including the national budget. So at the moment, the proposal for the closure of the coal mine and thermal power plant is somewhat 2033, the year, although the operating time of the power plant is until 2054. So this is something that we need to have in mind. But maybe to explain a little bit about specifics of Slovenia, we're currently like in an ideal electricity mix, right? So we have 1/3 nuclear, we have 1/3 hydro, and 1/3 thermal. So it's kind of an ideal balance that you could actually have. And it's a small electricity system as well. Slovenia is a small country. So 35% of the total electricity production in Slovenia is covered by this one single thermal power plant that our company owns. So more than 50% consumption covered by this power plant is in crisis period. So coal exit will have some major effects on security of supply of Slovenia. But maybe just a bit about the plans that we somehow see within the strategy. Slovenia still has unused hydropower potential. So one of our largest projects at the moment in this field, there are 10 to 15 new large run-of-river hydropower plants, and some of them are located in the regions, in the coal regions as well. We're in the process of building the largest photovoltaics in Slovenia, 3 megawatts, also located in one of the 2 coal regions. There's some possibility for the use of wind energy. And since the core goal is to keep the current energy locations in these regions, right, and keep the important role of these coal regions in energy, there's also a possibility to replace this current thermal production with CCGT. But as I said, no conclusions have been made yet. But let me just emphasize something. What is more important is the guarantee of adequate funding. So the entire financial burden cannot lie on the shoulders of a single company or a local community. So the state must ensure sufficient resources in the frame of specific legislation. For us, in this case, would be, for example, the mine closure law. And the sources, just to outline, the sources available for Slovenia from the EU dedicated Just Transition Fund are, for example, 235 million. But we estimate around 2 billion for the mine closure and necessary restructuring that will be needed. So there is quite substantial financial resources in this field that will still need to be guaranteed within this strategy that is still expected to be adopted. So that's from my side for the beginning.
Yeah, we'll get back to you in a minute. Maybe give Nika, you've got an interesting work that you're undertaking as regional minister in Groningen that has decided to shift away from one of the largest gas producing areas in Europe. So maybe you could explain to the audience, why is Groningen going in that direction? How has the transition process started? What does it actually want to achieve, and how will you achieve it, and what challenges are you facing along the way? So also quite an interesting other example.
Yeah, and it also started very interesting because, yes, we are the largest mining gas field. We have it over here, but yeah, and it brought us welfare for like 60 years. But like 10 years ago, we found out that we were starting a total crisis because we have earthquakes, a lot of earthquakes due to the natural gas mining. And so 6 years ago, it was terrible, and we had like 100 earthquakes a year. And so we were thinking about, okay, we really have to change this and get rid of the natural gas mining, and our national government decided so. And they said, well, 2022, we'll get rid of the natural gas mining. So that was really a total crisis, because although even my house was damaged by the earthquakes, it was also my house that was heated by the natural gas. And even more important, our total chemical industry was built on the natural gas mining. So we were in a total crisis, but as Karina said, it is not the responsibility of just one company. And that was what was felt here. And the people who worked in the chemical companies, they lived here. They still live here. And the government felt really responsible. And of course, also the knowledge institutes were thinking, okay, what can we do with our expertise of molecules? And we were expert in molecules. How can we use that unique selling point and the assets, the unique assets we have, like the gas fields, but also, of course, the pipelines, but also the salt caverns we have, and of course, the uses and the large off-takers we have from molecules. So together, and that was really what is new in energy transition is we don't have different sectors thinking of how can we do this energy transition, but we really have a triple helix cooperation about how can we tackle climate change, that is an important part of it, but also get rid of the usage of natural gas in a couple of years. So working together and make an ambitious plan, and I felt really supported by the knowledge institutes and also the CEOs from the chemical cluster. And together we made a plan, an ambitious plan, because of course, yeah, I was very idealistic and I wanted to change it, and I want my people not to live in damaged houses. But I know we have to earn money. And the CEO said yes, but we think we can have a perspective that we can be a front runner in hydrogen. So we found out we have to make an investment plan on hydrogen and still earn money, tackle climate change, be a front runner, and be start connecting the world in a new way, connect different sectors. And the most important part was, and I heard you about that, the important part is that, yeah, if you get rid of something, you have to replace it by something new. And that's not only the gas, but it's also the jobs. So we also thought about, okay, what is the perspective for the people who live in the natural gas industry? They are experts in molecules, so we could give them a new perspective as an expert in molecules, but then one without CO2. So green hydrogen was really our new perspective. So we started working on an investment plan together. We made an investment agenda. Now we have an investment plan of 9 billion euros. We became the first European hydrogen valley, and it was because we put all the we put all the companies and the knowledge institutes together in a whole value chain, and everyone in our region knows what he can do to support this new hydrogen economy and what he can do as in a job or in a financial way or perhaps in a governmental way. So we're really doing this together, and I think that's really new in energy transition.
Karina, what am I going to do as a coal miner in your area? Where am I going to go? Retirement, or what's the perspective? So how are you going to deal with ensuring jobs in your region, reskilling the workforce, enhancing energy capabilities, and reducing the societal impact, or at least spreading it as evenly as possible? Or am I going to lose my job as a coal miner in your area? What perspective are you giving me? Perhaps some thoughts from your side, how you humanize this transition process.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the key element I already mentioned earlier is, of course, maintaining as many jobs as possible. So this is a core element of the just transition process, so leaving no one behind. And in all the projects that are currently planned and under preparation, the core principle is to preserve jobs and create new opportunities for the region to maintain the level of economic development. So we kind of brought together in this national process all the relevant stakeholders. So there is a dedicated national working group where all stakeholders are cooperating. So local communities, industry, our utility, representatives of trade unions, representatives of regional development agencies, representatives of startup hubs, of knowledge institutes, of schools. So basically, all of us are working together to try to form like a balanced and synergetical approach to all the projects. Because in any case, we have to have the core element in mind, even to apply to any kind of EU funds. I mean, Russell will probably explain this a little bit in detail also, how the financing process during the EBRD is going. But this social aspect, we need to keep in mind when building any kind of project. For example, building a large hydropower plant, right? You have to think about the multi-purpose of the project. So you will create some additional services that will benefit the local community, that will benefit the local workers that can reskill, that can apply. So going from workers, miners, to reskilling, to try to work in the renewable, greener industries. So this is the core concept we're currently trying to keep in mind.
Nienke, I mean, you heard the same words, also cooperation on your side, what Karina was saying, the importance of cooperating, looking along the whole value chain. You shared earlier similar examples, but would it be the same, for example, going now also in terms of your ensuring how jobs are created, reskilling takes place also in the Groningen region? I think your mic has just gone off for a second. Now it's back on again, yeah. Okay, it's back on again.
Yeah, well, the most important part was, of course, creating security of investment. So we started by scaling it up, being ambitious, giving security for everyone that this is a plan for the next 10 to 20 years. And if you want to contribute, you can do it. And we make it affordable, we make it competitive. By scaling up offshore wind, by using the pipelines, and also by being a launching customer as a government. So this all together made it very clear to companies that they had to invest also in their people, in their employees. So it was like something like a perfect storm that the companies thought, well, okay, then I have to invest in my employees. They have to study. We have to work together with the knowledge institutes. What kind of jobs do we need? Okay, we need people to organize. We need people like the pipe fitters. We need all the different kind of jobs. And so we had something like an organically growing cooperation between the different sectors. And as a government, I felt supported by the knowledge institutes, and the knowledge institutes felt supported by the companies. So actually, that's what is quite new, and we can see it in the top level, but we can also see it at the more local jobs of the local companies and the small companies, that they're thinking about new ways of working together. That is something that is very crucial. Also for our new employees.
So cooperation is a key word there again. Yeah. All of this, of course, needs to be financed. Where does the money come from? You know, do we print more, as we've been doing the whole time? So Russell, maybe from your side, what does the EBRD do on the topic? What is often which you're also responsible, Just Transition Initiative? What does it mean, Just Transition? Which, as far as I can see, aims to ensure that the benefits of a green economy transition are shared while protecting vulnerable countries, regions, and people from falling behind. But what does this exactly entail, and how does it work in practice? And can you give us some examples of projects or regions or countries that help illustrate a little bit what's behind this initiative that we're talking about? Russell, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nikolaus. And for those that don't know, the EBRD is a transition bank. We were set up in the early 90s to support a sustainable market transition within our countries of operation, which now total nearly 40. We're focused on the private commercially financed projects, and we invest about 10 billion euros a year. Now, for us, the climate goals are clear around, and I don't need to go into those for this audience, around net zero, the role of adaptation and climate resilience, and aligning finance towards the Paris Agreement. But in EBRD's countries of operation, which stretch from Eastern Europe to Central Asia to Middle East and North Africa, we've got a huge diversity of different countries. I mean, Slovenia is one of our countries of operation too, and around 80% of EBRD's countries of operation, 80% of energy is provided by fossil fuels. So there's a huge challenge, and we know that in this transition that must come, that workers, communities and regions will require support, not only to overcome some of the challenges around shifting away from fossil fuels, but also so they can be part of the solution and receive the benefits that such a transition will bring. Now, for us, we're focused on really two things. First is supporting the types of territorial just transition strategies that Karina and Nienke were mentioning. We are supporting them in Europe, where I think there's already a huge amount of technical assistance, we are mainly focused on the financing, but outside of Europe, where the just transition mechanism does not exist, we are supporting our countries of operation with similar efforts and making sure that they can start to benefit from some of the experiences in Europe to say, well, what does just transition mean outside of Europe? We're also, of course, that's the kind of first element, the focus on let's call it policy, but we're also, of course, focused on financing. Now, what does it mean for us in practice in terms of just transition? How would we break that down? We think about it in kind of three ways. But the first is, when we have a subnational region that is reliant on fossil fuels, which is really what we're focused on, our first area of support will be around how can we green this region? What does the future look like in terms of shifting away from fossil fuels? And to give you an example, we've recently financed a solar PV plant in North Macedonia on the site of a former coal mine. And this is of course thinking about the future beyond fossil fuels in a way that fossil fuels have historically provided the employment and the economic activity in this specific region in North Macedonia, but we look at saying, well, what does the future of energy look like there? And we realize we can use some of the former fossil fuel assets for renewable energy. So that's the first area. The second area is really thinking about workforce planning and skills, because of course, as we shift from fossil fuels to renewables, the questions that come up that we need to address is, well, what's the future of the workers that work in these assets? What can be done? Not only the workers and the assets themselves, it's also about the communities and the supply chains that are linked to those assets. So we think very concretely around, well, what can be done? And here, I think in Europe, the efforts of the Just Transition Mechanism and the types of efforts that Karina were mentioning, I think will be really, transformative, thinking about, well, what's the future of work? We're doing that at a client level as well. So the territorial just transition plans are governmental. We're also working with private sector firms to think about, well, what does future workforce planning look like? We've recently done this with a utility in Poland, where we've basically financed a bond which was being channeled towards renewable energy, but also thinking about, well, what is, as this utility which is reliant on coal shifts to renewable energy, what would the workforce planning at the client level, at the company level, actually look like? But we also, so that's the kind of second area that we look at. We also look at regional economic development. So we say, well, beyond energy, and I think we must look beyond energy, where will there be future economic activity? And, within our countries' operations, we've got many examples of financing non-energy projects in regions that are currently high carbon, as we think about the future economic activity within them. And that's really important because I think some coal regions find it difficult to attract private finance. So this is, I think, one of the challenges as we step through this transition, is thinking about, well, how can we attract finance and private finance to some of the regions that are currently relying on fossil fuels? And I'll stop there.
Yeah, thanks, Russell. Karina, Nika, does that answer your question? Where are you going to get the money from to do this ambitious transition process? Or do you say, nice, but still difficult to access it? What does it actually mean for you in your various regions? Maybe Nika, you want to start first? What does such a financing strategy mean for you?
Yeah, well, I love the term future of work. Yeah, what we found out that it's by giving, how do you say it? By making it possible to scale up, it's even more easy for the small and medium companies to invest and to talk about large investments. So that's so I'm curious, Russell. Do you see it the same, that it's important for government to make it possible to grow and to be actually to show leadership in where we are heading to?
Well, I think one of the things that we undertook as we developed our own Just Transition initiative is we asked ourselves, well, what's the balance of public and private effort in this? And we actually undertook a study to look historically at coal transitions. What would be, what has been required, what has been the experience of historic coal transitions. And what you see is a number of things. One One of them is that the government plays a very strong role in coordinating such an effort around shifting away from coal. We've seen that. That can take a number of different. The characteristics of that are kind of numerous. One is around strategic planning, which I think this is what you've been discussing. But it's also about specific instruments to support, let's say, to support workers, whether and other policy initiatives that really sit underneath this. So I think the role of government is absolutely crucial in there. But that is a thread that kind of runs through all of the experience that we kind of looked at in the EBRD in developing our work, which is very focused on the private sector and thinking about what's the role of the private sector.
Let me try and get Felipe on board slowly, because poor old Felipe is otherwise be sitting there. Felipe, in our earlier discussion, we also had, we're touching the same sort of issue about humanizing the energy transition, but you made in earlier discussions that we had in bilateral discussions, you made sort of points like trust and proximity, solidarity and collaboration, diversity and complementarity. And the question is, through your numerous experience in the international roles, how do you see this transition process going? How do we humanize this? How do we make sure this actually happens? Some thoughts from your side, and then we can start a roundtable discussion.
Yeah, thank you. At the World Energy Council, we have a kind of global view, and the only thing we know is that there is no silver bullet solution, and that as every region is quite different, you have to go to the reality of the region. And this is probably where the human starts. But whatever you want to do in transition, and this is not the first transition that the world is doing. Remember, we started burning trees and then going to coal, then going to gas, etc., etc. But there are fundamentals, and the first fundamental has been already said, is we think we are talking about energy, but we are talking about development in reality. And this is what we have to go back to. What kind of development do we want? What kind of progress do we want? And here I will stop 1 second to say there is a huge difference between progress and innovation. And probably the difference is around the reason why and the meanings of what you are doing. And this is why we are completely agnostic in terms of technology at the World Energy Council. But we consider that there is some basics. And if you want to move in the right direction, you have to provide security of supply, and this is the first thing. Nobody will move away from security, so you have to first consider this. The second is the affordability and equity that we have been discussing. And the third is, which is the current driver, is environment impact. And probably what makes this transition so different from the others, that we are doing it with 6 billion plus people on board. We have never done that. And probably reaching the limit and the boundary of the planet, which is why this transition is so different from the others. Another thing that we have not discussed, just touch, is that the problem is already there. We have to make sure that the transition puts us in a better world, as it has been said, but more importantly, in a more resilient world. And there is a paradox, because the solution we are bringing are less, between brackets, resilience to the nature, weather events. So we have to consider this. But just to conclude on what you asked, which is the trust and the solidarity and all the things, is because I really think that the local solution is the solution, whatever you want to do. This is the only way that we are, coming back to human, putting the solution at the right level, allowing exchange of good practice first. Second, the finance world talk about the investment. We we never think about the cost of the stranded assets that are here. We have to, when I was listening to the example of moving away from coal, and she said, you said, we have the perfect mix today. I said, and probably you have, because when I started my career 20 years ago, that was the perfect mix. But now it's no longer the perfect mix because we decided that one of the source, by the way, we have solution and technological solution for this source. Perhaps you can find a way of a solution without getting rid of it completely. But anyway, this is a problem that we have to solve with the technology. And the complementarity is also very interesting because there is no perfect, as we say, no silver bullet, and any solution you bring will bring another problem that you have to solve. Example, the intermittency or the under-predictability, the less stability of the grid and all these things. And the region, again, is the right level to solve it. And this is why in the World Energy Council, we are going now in what we call the Energy Community Plus, which is we bring not only the supplier or the classical actor of the world of energy, but also the users, because there is no, as we said at the beginning, there is no interest of generating energy if you don't have users. And this is in this dialogue of stakeholders, as it has been said before, that probably the solution lies. I can continue for a few hours like this, but I suppose that you want to give back the floor to others.
Karina or Nico or Russell, do you want to answer on that one at all? Add anything into that?
Yeah, maybe just to complement on what Philip already said. Yes, the security of supply is something that we need to have in mind when we're going towards this race to zero, of course. I mean, this is going to bring up amounts of renewables that the grid will not be able to consume, right? So we need to have this security of supply issue in mind when we are developing other technologies like storage as well, right? So yes, as you said, local regional solutions are the key because every nation, every region is different. They have local specificities, they have local needs. So as I mentioned before, every project that will be developed under this, well, in Slovenia, under this national strategy, will have these local specificities in mind. We will stay within the region. We will try to listen to the workers, to the energy needs there. I mean, they have been the regions have been dependent, right, on this on the energy traditionally, on the energy locations. They grew with that for decades. So it's a tradition that it's kind of difficult for them to understand that it's going to be changed. But again, we need to think about future generations, right? So the future needs to be greener. Our generations will live in a different world, hopefully. So the entire transition needs to have this complex, needs to encompass this complex situation that we are currently in.
Yeah, I think there are many words that one often hears. I lived abroad for a long time, came back to Europe, we talk about energy poverty now, people who can't afford energy. I think that's the point of not leaving anyone behind. I think that's the important point. So we have many technical solutions, but we also need to find a way that is actually affordable for everyone. And if you're faced, like myself, having to get out of an oil-fired heating system and no real alternatives at the moment, how do we get out of it at an affordable rate? Particularly old people, how can they afford this transition? I think that's really important to bring that human part back into it and say, how do we make it affordable for everyone? Maybe Russell, from your side as a bank, how do you make it affordable? How do you make it possible, that people can afford such a transition and can go along with it, that we don't lose anyone along the way?
Well, look, I think we're the way the EBRD works is we have private sector a relationship with our clients who we are lending to. And we also work on policy dialogue. So we have, of course, a relationship with governments too, and that's quite a special position that's different from, a normal commercial bank. What I would say at the client level is that we're heavily focused on a few things when we're working with our clients as we think about this. The first is this concept of low carbon pathways, which what that means in practice is saying you know, what's the future of the industry, and what's the future of that specific client in a world that's net zero, and how can we think about taking them from their starting point today to one that's fits with what the climate ambition requires. And that's a transition, and requires understanding capital requirements. It requires understanding, you know, what technical solutions actually sit there, and only then can you really then start unpicking, well, you know, is such a thing affordable? Is it desirable? What would be some of the challenges in doing that? When we also work at the client level, we're also thinking about risks, so and financial risks. And coming back to something that Felipe said, is thinking about some of the potentially unintended consequences of this on the private sector, you know, around stranded assets and those types of things. We're working with our clients across multiple different sectors, thinking about climate-related financial risk. And what we see across our clients and in our countries of operation are, you know, a diversity of starting points. Some clients have already considered this and are much further along, and others have not. And I think only then, you know, when we understand that starting point, can we really think, you know, what this exactly means.
Yeah, Sneemke, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I was thinking about what Philippe said, and what we worked on. We started with making a programmatic approach. So we started with a small ecosystem. No, it's not small, but really ecosystem you could see, you could touch. It was about the production of green hydrogen by a solar farm, then electrolysis on location, then storage on the location, transport through a pipeline that was made here, and the usage in the industry and mobility and our own cars. And so we started with a small ecosystem that everyone could see, and everyone could say, well, I want to use the green hydrogen also, and could show how they would use it. And we made a programmatic approach together with the companies, the large industry, all the off-takers we could think about. So large trucks, our own buses, a new train. So we really made a system and then made a plan how to scale it up. So we made a plan from now on. Next year we'll try to transform the pipelines, and our national government just mentioned that they're going to do it. So then we have the new part is, of course, we need more offshore wind. Therefore, we need more electrolysis, and then the large industry knows how much years they have to transform their burners. And so we really have a year-to-year programmatic approach, so we leave no one behind. And everyone can think about, okay, how can I interact with the rest of the system and use the sustainable green hydrogen? So it is really a plan made together, and it's about scaling up. And of course, they need extra money from the government in the beginning, but with a perspective how to live without the subsidy scheme.
That's good. Maybe we could just, Karina and Niemke, as an idea, take the theme of this year's Vienna Energy Forum, which is where action meets ambition. So when you think of the energy transitions, including at the regional level, and you think of making sure that these transitions are fair and fit for the future, what do you think have we achieved? Are our actions really meeting our ambitions? Karina, how do you see that from your side?
Yeah, I think anyone can have ambition, right? But in reality, the implementation of these ambitions and actions needed are key. And so without action, and of course the key actors involved here, all the stakeholders that we've mentioned, no ambition can be properly achieved. So what have we achieved so far? Yes, we have goals at the EU level, and we have energy and climate goals that we need to achieve. We have global goals at the UN level, right? So I think in some cases the EU is maybe a little bit too ambitious when it comes to this heavy race to zero. We need to have the competitiveness issues in mind as well. I mean, if the EU is going to take the first step, but China and India and other actors are lagging behind, aren't we a bit in the process of losing our competitiveness? So it's also important to increase the pressure of globally for other actors to step in. So in case we are going to take a risk in our companies, our economies' competitiveness, this is something to be definitely considered. Being ambitious, yes, but with great commitment of all relevant stakeholders.
I think Nika, you showed very nicely how you match the two and make sure there's a perspective for industry. Philip, how do you see it from your side?
I mean, if we are moving in the right direction and the result that we are seeing...
Are our actions meeting our ambitions?
Yeah. No, if we see, no, it's we are still far from the goals. What I am seeing at the business level, the cooperation between business and state is starting to move well in the right direction. I think for business, what is still missing is the reality of the cost that Kaina said. As long as CO2 in the atmosphere is free of charge, you cannot expect that business will move in the right direction. We are starting to get there, and I think this is nice. I think what we are seeing now for the next COP, which is the race to zero, is starting also to get some momentum, although we are not immune to a lot of greenwashing waves also coming in. And then states have and government and obviously the civil society, we have a great responsibility to watch what is doing and see if the action are in the real direction. And I think this is going. So for me, this is direction is there, the speed is not there, and the scale is not there. And this is why I am so happy to listen to what has been said at the region and the ministry level, when you say we have taken care of the people that are losing. Because in all my career, when I had to do a transition plan or restructuring in huge company, the key success factor is you take care of the people that are losing. Because if you only take care of the winners, this is nice, perhaps for the next election, but this is not enough. And I think this is really great to take care of this.
I think you brought an interesting point in there. I mean, in some of the early discussions on the forum, there was also mention about what they term energy literacy and skills to play an active role. Workforces need to have the right capabilities. We need to better understand new energy uses and new energy users. So you as panelists, what would you see are the biggest challenges in this regard? And how can these challenges be met? So how do we get greater energy literacy? How do we improve the skills? And again, this humanizing aspect on that one. Maybe Russell from your side, from the bank, but also Nienke in Groningen, how you see that.
Russell,
you want to go first, or?
Well, just to say, I mean, to come back to your, maybe to take your last question and this one in two. You know, we know that we need to do more. We know we need to move more quickly. And in the bank, the practical way that we're doing that is by working directly with our clients, but working directly with our countries of operation, and saying, well, how can we improve your climate and energy ambitions? So we will scale up our efforts beyond, what we have done historically around NDCs and long-term strategies. And at the heart of this is cross-government coordination, coordination with lots of different actors, be they public and private sector, which is why I'm so interested to hear about the Slovenian and the kind of Dutch case here that we have, about how they've actually done this, because this really is the crux of the matter, is to bring this topic, which might not seem on the face of it, in any way related to, let's say, the Labour Ministry of a government, or a department within a firm that has historically not dealt with this, and saying, well, what does this mean for you? How can you support? So I think this this idea, and I haven't sat on, I haven't listened to any of the other panels, so I don't know in what context it was discussed, but I would agree that having literacy around energy and climate change and saying, well, what does this mean for my day-to-day work, whatever perspective I have within a company or a government, is a good way to start.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. From the date, yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's the energy is everywhere, and we're in a transition, and it's not the first transition. And now we have to think about new solutions for new problems. So we have to realize that old solutions are not going to work for these new problems. And that is someone that I think most of the people do realize. And that's what makes them a little bit afraid. Is there a new job for me in this new economy? So what we did is we analyzed all the skills that people have over here. Because they worked in the molecules sector, the mining sector itself, or the chemical cluster where it's used, or the company that's built the heaters for the houses. So they were all worried, but we searched for what different skills do they have, what different skills are needed in the new economy, and what is needed to transform it. And yes, we have to invest in it. That's what we do, also with the help from the Just Transition Fund. And that gives them the comfort that in the new world, they still have a job. And that's why most of the people here really support the transition from natural gas to green hydrogen. And I have to say, it wasn't easy in the beginning, and we heard the word messy before. So yeah, it was a little bit messy because people were afraid, we're going to lose 20,000 or 30,000 jobs, and there will only be 5,000 new jobs. But that's not what's happening, because in the new economy, we also need coordinators. We also need teachers. So we really talk to all the knowledge institutes. What can you do? How can we make also this programmatic approach so we know in which year we need the different skills and the new jobs? And I think we still need the leadership and the support from the different sectors to make that approach. And that's the only way that we can leave no one behind. Doing it together, and you have to be serious. You have to be sure this is the change that's coming, and we have to start now. And a couple of years ago, we thought, well, we can only have the green hydrogen economy here after 2030. But right now, we are talking about 2025, 2027. So it's getting much faster than we thought. Because we have a national climate agreement here, and it started 2 years ago. And it really feels a little bit old already, because it was a switch. It really turned the way we think to, okay, there's only one path, and it's to a net zero situation. So, and that's being around the corner. That gives a wonderful energy. And sure, if you can say, we're going to leave no one behind. So for me, as a regional minister, that's what we needed. That's what we needed.
I think you brought out some interesting points. I think for me also as a citizen, I think it's also nice to know, I mean, it's nice to be positive and be futuristic in their approach, and not to be told why things don't work, but to be told why they do work. I think we often, we're so, particularly when I see how nimble new economies are versus our old economies such as Germany, here you're so tied up with restrictions that you end up being choked by them. Rather than someone telling you how to make things easier, you're told 99 reasons why it's going to be difficult. And I think as a consumer, if we don't make it easier for people, this being energy literate is really a problem, because I can only be really literate if I'm not swamped by ridiculous rules and regulations. So can we be, let's say, more agile, more let's say, innovative, rather than always restricting and saying why things can't go? And as soon as you restrict it, of course, you marginalize people in the process. But maybe it's a good point that you just brought across there. If we look at the exact moment in time now, also with the upcoming COP26 and the continuing impacts of the COVID pandemic, let's not think that this thing's going away so fast. It is a good time to provide a fresh impetus for the issue of humanizing energy in the transition process. So how do we again maybe re-emphasize this humanizing also, and how can we push it a little bit further? Perhaps Philippe, from the council's perspective, how would you see it?
Yeah, we said that as we started to develop this, the solution is not, the technology is not a goal in C per se. It's an instrument that we have to use. We should not lose sight of the objective. And as we said, this is not the first transition that we are doing, but we are doing it for a reason, that we reach the planet boundaries and we have too much CO2 in the atmosphere and we have to move. And this, we don't lose this core goal. And the solution will be, as we said, in the human behavior, and not in the technology per se. So we need this energy literacy. We have to understand what we are doing, and we have to share the conclusion that is necessary. If not, we already have all over the world a reaction of the people because they don't understand why we are asking this, or why they are being asked to pay more or to change the way they were happy to live. So we have to explain what we are doing. I really insist that because of, and this is the theme of this roundtable, the right level of decision is necessary, and region is, because you can take care of the people, because you can explain, because you can share, because you live somewhere. And the third thing is to enable the workforce transition, which is also, again, the right level is the region. So if we do these three things, I think we're going to really be successful.
Russell, maybe we're coming towards the end of our panel discussion. Maybe just some few closing remarks from your side, from the bank, and also on the instrument that you have in place, how we can move forward on that one. Just a couple of words from your side.
Yeah, well, I just want to say that how the imperative of working together to deliver on this topic here, which is multifaceted, complex, and needs to involve a lot of different actors. And I'll leave you with this, which is a practical example of something we're doing in the Western Balkans and Ukraine with in supporting coal regions, along with the EU, the World Bank, the EIB, and the Energy Community Secretariat, amongst others. We're really pooling our institutional resources to say how can we best support coal regions, bringing our respective different strengths. And we've set up a platform to do this, which mirrors a bit the EU platform, the Just Transition platform, of the coal regions platform there. And we're really looking at the different aspects for it within that platform. And that's really what, we see that as working quite well in bringing different people together, which is really what this requires. It's beyond a single institution to solve the challenges that we're talking about here.
Karina, is that an option for you?
Yeah, can I have just a short question for Russell at this point when we're discussing the mechanisms? Can you tell me, Russell, what does the EBRD use to assess these criteria? Do you use sustainable finance criteria when assessing the projects eligible for the Just Transition mechanism?
So we are looking at the nature of projects. We're not the EU, so this is not the financing for Just Transition, the Just Transition mechanism and the Just Transition fund. So to be very, very clear, but what we are looking for is a plan at the regional level, ideally. So within Europe, I think the territorial Just Transition plans are there, and then saying, well, how can the EBRD come in with its financing to support some of these plans? But I mean, I think we would have to look at the specifics of any. If you have a project in mind, I'm very happy to discuss it offline and see if it would be suitable for EBRD financing.
Great. Nienke, last closing words from your side before I give Philippe the last words.
Yeah, I think this really showed this, especially this last question. So thank you, is that we can only do this together with the different sectors together and really make a program and see how we can all contribute and support each other. So wonderful.
Philippe, from the council, last words.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to close. This was a great panel, and I learned a lot, and I thank you very much for this opportunity. The last word would be certainly around this energy literacy. We have to understand what we are doing. I think we are far from understanding everything. We tend to jump to conclusion. We tend to reassure ourselves looking for the silver bullet that will solve all our problem. But we know that it's not a reality, and that we will have to work together for custom-made solution at each level of the society. And for the first time, perhaps, we are in an existential transition. I think this is what is probably changing the urgency of this problem.
Karina, thank you very much for sharing your insights into the coal and where you're starting from. And Niemke, also the interesting part of how Groningen is getting out of gas. Russell, for sharing with us the financing arrangements and the different initiatives of solidarity across Europe. And Philippe, thank you very much indeed for sharing also on from the council side. So from my side and to all the audiences, I hope it was an interesting discussion for you all. I'd like to thank you very much indeed for participating and joining the panel discussion. Yeah, and wish you luck in the different projects and maybe meet somewhere else again, either to celebrate the opening, the closing of the coal mines, the new energy coming in there, or coming in, enjoying the hydrogen in Groningen or some other aspects like that. So thank you very much indeed, and wish you a pleasant day, and please stay safe and away from COVID if possible. Right? Thank you very much indeed, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.